Africana Studies at TSU.
Reparations and
Land grant reparation.
Land grant reparation.
And then reestablishing
the
Department of Africana
Well,
Studies.
I tell you
at
what,
TSU.
let's just do land
Grant reparation.
reparations.
All right, and then I'll put the rest of it with it.
Yeah, what we can get started, because I
Right.
don't want to throw all of that out.
At one time.
Yeah. And get
We'll do land grant reparation.
Because that puts a lot on me.
Well,
but I can deal
you'll
with
be all
land
right.
grant reparations. I can say that we have today.
Can you set land grant reparation and Africana Studies?
And Africana Studies.
You can handle that.
I can handle that.
Oh, we're good.
Okay, I can handle that.
Well, as long as you just put that in there, everything will be just fine.
Yeah, okay. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is land grant reparations and the establishment of the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State University. And we have with us to talk about land grant reparations and the establishment of the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State University, Dr. AAl-Hadid. And of course, Dr. AAl-Hadid, I don't think that you need any kind of introduction to our audience this morning, because you've been with us a number of times.
Absolutely.
But just in case there might be one or two individuals who might not know Dr. AAl-Hadid and might not be able to associate him with some of the departments that we deal with at Tennessee State University, why don't you give us some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of leading you to us this morning, and then we'll talk about the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State University.
Yeah, so I think what's important to know about me is I got 2 degrees in Montgomery, Alabama, one from George Washington Carver High and the other one from Alabama State. I left the cradle of the Confederacy and went out to California, got a doctorate degree in sociology, and I came to Tennessee State in 1973. I am a practicing Muslim. I helped to establish the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State in 1994. We developed that department over a period of almost 15 years. Someone came from the Tennessee Board of Regents and downsized it to a minor. And where we are now is we're trying to get it back, and we're also trying to get land grant reparations for Tennessee State University. We feel that the state of Tennessee owes TSU almost $100 million in land grant reparations because they were not supplying the matching funds from 1958 to at least down to 2005.
When you talk about land grant reparations, Doctor, yes, I know that you're talking about land grant institutions.
Absolutely.
And there's a history in reference to land grant institutions, and certainly there's a history in reference to where African American universities and colleges fall within land grant reparations. So let's give our audience some idea in terms of what we mean when we talk about land grant reparations and about land grant reparations period, dealing with not only historical black institutions and land grant colleges, but where white institutions might fit into these land grants during this period.
Yes, that's very important. Every state in the union has at least one land grant university. Most of them have what we call the 1862 land grants. And these were put in place during the president of Abraham Lincoln. There was a senator by the name of Morrow. And so the first legislation called the 1862 Morrow Act. Now, of course, once these land grants were established in the South, they did not allow African Americans to participate in these land grant colleges. So in 1890, a second Morrow Act was passed. Now in Tennessee State, well in the state of Tennessee, there are 2 land grants. The University of Tennessee is the 1862 land grant, and Tennessee State University is the 1890 land grant. One of the hallmarks of a land grant, and you sort of tell, especially with the HBCUs, whenever you see the initials A and I, like Tennessee A&I or Florida A&M, those would let you know that these are land grant schools. They started out during the period of the American Industrial Revolution, where they were trying to get the economy to transition from a slaveocracy, you know, the plantations, and move more into the mainstream of the Industrial Revolution, which was taking place primarily in the North. And so that's, I think that's the background history of it. Now, what we're trying to do is that the Department of Agriculture every year gives a pot of money to these land grant schools. In order to secure that money, the land grant schools, the states where the land grants are located have to match the fund. Say, for example, if the Department of Agriculture gave the University of Tennessee $100 million, well, the University of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee itself would have to come up with another $100 million in order to match that. So for that academic year, University of Tennessee would have, let's say, $200 million. Now, if you did the same thing with Tennessee State, which is smaller, TSU has about 9,000 students. University of Tennessee has approximately 28,000 students. It has an endowment of about 1.6 million. TSU has an endowment of 51 million. So the appropriation would be different, but the match has to be there.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about aspects of that. Sure. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Yeah, that's essentially.
Yes.
Now what's the main thing that you want to deal with this? Because I'm going to simply introduce.
It's two things I want to deal with. One is getting that $100 million that the state of Tennessee owes Tennessee State, because we weren't getting matching funds from 58 down to the
Okay, well, we talk about matching funds.
Matching funds.
That's so
and then we want to talk about reestablishing the major in Africana studies.
Okay.
Those are the two things.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that as a third segment. Reestablishment
of the department in the third segment.
Okay. Second segment, we're going to deal with
land grant match.
Land grant
perfect.
match.
Perfect. Perfect. That's a good format.
Yeah.
That's a good
see,
and then we
so
can get in more depth with the land grant.
8 minutes on land on the matching funds.
Right.
And then we're going to get to that last element. 10 minutes on that third segment.
On bringing the department.
But overall, that first 6 minutes gave us essentially who you are and what we're talking about this morning. And so we're going to start talking about land grant matching funds within the framework of what we've already said.
Absolutely. And then we put that Geyer case in. So
you're going to go 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
I mean, 8 minutes on this second segment. We did 6 minutes.
Okay.
8 minutes on the second segment.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back on. Welcome back to the show. The guest is Dr. AAl-Hadid from Tennessee State University. Can I say?
Absolutely. Adjunct there.
Okay, from Tennessee State University.
Right.
And the topic is land grant reparations and historical black institutions of higher education, and because we've already laid out the land grant for whites and the land grant for blacks, but we want to talk about the matching. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. AAl-Hadid from Tennessee State University, and the topic is land grant reparations and the establishment of the Africana Studies Department at Tennessee State University. Doctor, let's start off this second segment by talking about what you indicated during the first segment about the matching funds that were to come from the federal government dealing with African institutions and white institutions. Talk about it from that perspective.
Well, if you look at the land grant footprint, there are 96 counties in the state of Tennessee. The University of Tennessee has a footprint in all 96 counties, like Ag Extension, 4-H Club, research, and they get an enormous amount of money. As a matter of fact, when the money comes in from the Department of Agriculture, the University of Tennessee gets at least 70 to 85% of all of the land grant money that comes in. Now, it is an 1862 land grant. It has a larger footprint. Tennessee State, on the other hand, is an 1890 land grant, which are, you know, your historically black colleges, and has a smaller footprint. Maybe TSU goes into maybe half of that, probably maybe about 40 or 50 counties, and consequently gets less money. So University of Tennessee gets 75%, Tennessee State gets maybe about 25% of the land grant money that comes in. Now, the problem historically, when TSU became a full-fledged land grant university in 1958, that was roughly during the administration of Dr. Davis. I think I'm right in terms of that history. So TSU would get the land grant money, but it would not get matching funds from the state. Our matching funds would go to University of Tennessee. Sometimes University of Tennessee would get a 1-to-1 match, a 2-to-1 match. They got as high as an 8-to-1 match. To give you some idea what that would look like, if, again, using that number, 100 million, if the University of Tennessee got 100 million in land grant money, the state would give it another 100 million, or they might give them 200 million, or 300 million, or 400 million, or 500 million. So when it ends up, they have a whole lot of money. They might have $6 or $7 million off of that initial 100 million. Now, when Tennessee State would get probably 50 million.
Which was established under the second land grant.
The 1990s.
1890s, yeah,
right.
1890s. Yeah.
The 1890 land grant, because then the 1862 land grant, especially in the South, they were not fair or just. So if Tennessee State got, let's say, 20 million, which is rare, usually gets maybe about 10 or 12 million, then the state would have to come up with another 10 million, so Tennessee State would have 20 million. But from 1958 until the time, say roughly about 2005 or 2006, TSU was not getting a match. And how were they able to secure the funds? That meant they had to dip into TSU's operating budget in order to secure the money for the land grant. Otherwise, it would be sent back to the Department of Agriculture.
What was the rationale for not allowing Tennessee State University to receive that match, those matching funds after a certain period?
You have to realize that that was during the time of Jim Crow, or legal segregation. So with white supremacy being the government, then the University of Tennessee could do whatever they wanted to do. And was nothing Tennessee State could do or say about it because they were under that type of oppression.
In other words, Tennessee State ought to be glad to receive any land grant, any part of that land grant from the federal government, but the state of Tennessee really almost ignored to match those funds. Is that what we're saying?
We're saying that the University of Tennessee operates as an academic monopoly. It is the dominant or flagship university in the state of Tennessee, and it gets whatever, it always gets the lion's share of appropriations, whether it's coming from the state or whether it's coming from the federal government or from the private sector. And so TSU, because it had to dip into its operating budget over those years from 1958 to about 2005, 2006, TSU, as we speak, is suffering from what we might call arrested development. So if you take money out of the operating budget, that means buildings are not going to be kept up and maintained. That means that you know, supplies for students or faculty salary, some part of the normal operating budget would suffer because you're having to secure the land grant money. You got to take some of the operating money to secure that. So that's why TSU is in the shape that it is now. I mean, like I said earlier, TSU only has an endowment of $51 million. The University of Tennessee has an endowment of $1.6 billion. So in other words, you can see the uneven development. But the common denominator is that they are both land grant institutions.
Both
operating in conjunction with the Federal Department of Agriculture.
Whether you look at the 1860 institutions or the 1890 institutions,
yes,
they are both responding to what a match fund that
right,
they receive.
Absolutely.
And Tennessee State University does not receive
right,
a matching fund
right,
after a certain period. And
right,
then when it does receive it, it's much less, in a real sense, than what is given out to the major institute, the University of Tennessee. And you say that this is what happens throughout the South, dealing with all of these historical black...
Whether it's Arkansas A&M in Arkansas, or whether it's Alabama A&M in Alabama, or Florida A&M in Florida, it's the same story. Mm-hmm. There are about 15 or 16 HBCUs that are land grant, mm-hmm, okay, among the state schools. Mm-hmm. And so they suffer from the same kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing about it was that you remember when in 1968, when the University of Tennessee established a branch in Nashville, the intent there was to run Tennessee State out of business. So now you would only have one land grant in the whole state of Tennessee, which would be University of Tennessee in 1862.
Which would get all the money.
Would get all of the money. There would be no money for an 1890 land grant, because TSU, if you will recall, is the only public HBCU in the whole state of Tennessee. And it is the only public university in Nashville. All the other public universities in Nashville are either community colleges or technology centers. So TSU has only two choices. It can either be a pawn in the higher education chess game, or it could be the queen bee in the higher education chess game.
Because if it were to get the match funds that should come to it. And what about, you're talking about getting match funds from earlier years as well. Okay.
That's where the reparations come in.
And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our second commercial break, and we'll talk about that.
Yes.
And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Okay.
Wish in reference to that.
The story.
Well, I want to hear the story.
Yes, sir.
See, and that's why you're here to have the story.
Now,
told.
will this be on, will my students be able to grab it tomorrow?
Not tomorrow,
next week?
But next week.
Okay, I meet with them on Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay, we should be able to, what's the day? We should be able to deal with it between now and Thursday. I'll get you a copy.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy.
Okay.
And you to deal with that.
Okay. Right. I'll give me a DVD.
Yeah.
And I'll play it
or I'll put it and I'll send it to your email.
Okay.
By way of the web.
Right.
You just give me your email address and I'll just send you a copy of it.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've done another one on reparations too.
Yeah, you have. I can send you anything you want. You do.
Yes, just send me the ones on reparations.
Okay, you tell
me. Because
I
know I have a previous one on reparations. We're getting them geared up for the reparation great debate.
Anything that you want, just go to my website and put Dr. AAl-Hadid and click.
Right.
And everything that you've done come out, all 150 or 200 of them.
Oh, my.
It's been there.
You said you were going to make me famous.
It's in there. You've been famous.
Worldwide.
You get 4.7
hits.
100,000
hits. A year?
Yeah, no, it's right there. You look at it. You haven't seen that?
No. It's on YouTube?
It's on YouTube,
Facebook,
on Twitter, on Facebook, on everything. I got 75,000 videos out there on those 3 channels. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. AAl-Hadid from Tennessee State University, and the issue is land grant reparation. And of course, Dr. AAl-Hadid, I think we've given our audience some idea in terms of the disparity, in terms of the money that African institutions receive as well as white institutions in terms of land grants. And so what we'd like to do today is to allow you the opportunity to talk about further developments in reference to this.
Yes. Well, you know, we're having a great debate next month, and the resolution is going to be land grant reparations for Tennessee State and a world-class Africana Studies Department in order to overcome a century of arrested development and cultural alienation.
And neglect.
And neglect, absolutely. So what has happened now, as you know, we established the Department of Africana Studies in 1994. It was the only freestanding Africana Studies Department in the whole Southeast. Now, of course, our neighbors in Middle Tennessee, to the north, we had Austin P. And then, of course, to our south, I guess, we had Middle Tennessee State. They had minors with black culture centers. But they were prevented from getting the major because we had it. Now, had they gotten it, that would have been duplication of programs, which would have been against the consent.
And almost eliminated Tennessee State University
now,
reference.
And so what happened, because they set a benchmark of graduating 10 students a year on an average, because of the elements that were working inside of the university against the prosperity of the department, we weren't able to hit that 10 a year benchmark. We were able to hit like 7 and 8 a year. So the Board of Regents sent an interim president out with a mission, and that was to get rid of the culture of Tennessee State, to get rid of that department, and also to dismantle the College of Arts and Sciences. So in that scenario, we lost the major in Africana Studies, and it was downsized to a minor. But just can you imagine a so-called historically black college that does not see the history and culture of people of African descent as mission essential? I mean, how do you justify calling Tennessee State black anything when you don't value Africana studies or the study of people of African descent or the history of people of African descent?
So you're saying that the Africana Studies Department represents the most important element in terms of how Africans can identify at the institution with the African experience.
Yeah, well, the thing is, why do parents send their children to a so-called historically black college? So that they can learn something about their culture, learn some about their history, so they will become culturally literate and culturally competent. Because they've already had 12 years of white studies at these schools, whether public or private. So now it's time for them to study themselves. And then when they come to these schools, yes, they offer it in various departments. They might even have a minor or a major, but it's all coincidental. None of it is required in the general education curriculum. So in other words, the black experience becomes the bait that attracts African-American students to these schools, and then they do a bait and switch by giving them another dose of white studies. And that's, I think there's something unethical about that. I'm not going to say it's criminal, but it certainly is unethical, because you're saying you're a black school, but you don't value the culture and the history of black people. Proof of which you major in the minor and minor in the major. You see what I'm saying? So if you're in black school, you're supposed to be intentional about teaching the children, these young people, about their history and their culture. Because right now we're in another period where we're going through another black power phase or another black consciousness phase. Proof of which we had 8 years of a black president, and you got this young people in the streets talking about Black Lives Matter. But somehow or another, that has not washed onto the campuses of these HBCUs. They have not picked up the clarion call to talk about how Black Lives Matter. You know, it's not that significant to them. They want to more or less be an imitation white school, a carbon copy of a white school. And whatever white schools value in terms of, you know, training people to work in corporate America, that's what they value. And when you're talking about majoring in Africana Studies, the first thing they would say to you, what can you do with a major in Africana Studies? The answer is whatever you can do with a major in history, English, sociology. You can go to law school, you can go to medical school. anything you can do with any major in the humanities, the social sciences, and behavior, but they don't realize this.
But you've already demonstrated through the students that you've graduated from the Africana Studies Department that they can do anything. They can go to medical school, to law school, et cetera, et cetera. Same, and so there should really be no question in terms of the validity of the information that students are receiving in the Africana Studies area. Is that what we're saying? Right.
What we're saying is, when someone asks me the question, what can you do with a major in Africana Studies? First of all, I think the first thing that happened is that you can check out your mind and get a proper alignment of your thinking and your spirit with your history and your culture and with your community, right? And so when they talk about these majors, STEM majors, for example, if you get a STEM major, what are you going to do? You will get a job working for white supremacy. You're not going to get a job, working for yourself. You're not going to be inspired to do that, right? But with Africana Studies, a lot of our majors are entrepreneurs. They are principals of schools. They work as counselors. They are in the area of clinical psychologists, school psychologists. Every sector of society that you can imagine, we have our young people working in those. We've graduated about 61 students. Last student came out in 2014.
And these students demonstrate the validity of the Africana experience. When they get their degree or their major in Africana Studies, you've got proof that students can take that degree and do practically anything that they wish to do.
And I think the students that major in Africana Studies have more confidence in their ability to deal with white supremacy and capitalism. They don't have that inferiority complex. They are not uncertain about
limited in terms of what they think about.
Because see, Africana Study does for us what white studies does for white students. It makes you feel good about being who you are. And that's what education is supposed to do. See, all knowledge that's useful and beneficial starts with what? Self-knowledge. And then it works out to knowledge of others and things. And that's how it works. That's how you have to navigate yourself through a society whose culture is based on white supremacy and economic system is based on class inequality.
Now, we've got about a minute and a half.
Yes.
What would you suggest in terms of how we might be able to move this Africana Studies idea and into a larger area without opposition?
Well, I think that what we have to do at Tennessee State specifically, we're going to have a great debate next month. And I'd like for your viewing audience to just check with me on my email. It's called greatdebateuniverse@gmail.com. Greatdebateuniverse.
U-N-I-V-E-R.
U-N-I-V-E-R. Greatdebateuniverse@gmail.com. And just check with me on that, and we'll let you know when the great debate is taking place next month. And we're also going to have a great debate during the time of Kwanzaa, which will be on the 28th of December. So we'll have one in great debate in November, within the next 2-3 weeks. And then we're also going to have a great debate during the days of Kwanzaa, the third night of Kwanzaa on December the 28th.
And of course, all of this is part of the Great Debate series that you've sponsored at Tennessee State University and that you've talked to us on numerous occasions dealing with that particular topic.
See, we started the Great Debate in 1985, and our mission statement was to push back on the idea of the